On PM Express tonight, we're having a very fundamental conversation. 2020 elections, with some 14 months to go into the elections. But just in the last few minutes, you've heard the police announcing that the missing Takoradi girls, and the police is confirming that the four missing Takoradi girls are no more. They are actually dead. And the acting Inspector General of Police, Samuel Opon Bueno, who addressed the press conference just a while ago, says the results of the DNA test on the remains retrieved in Takoradi have been relayed to the families, along with some condolences. They actually expressing condolences to the four girls who have been missing for some time now, and we've been looking for them. We'll pick some comments on all of this, but election 2020, the EC and the EIU report will also be delving into that. So with barely 14 months into 2020 elections, there are fundamental issues begging the attention of the Electoral Commission and the political parties. First, the latest report by the Economist Intelligence Unit is predicting a win for President Akufo-Addo in the 2020 elections. We'll be interrogating that shortly. The report also says it will be difficult for the NDC to portray itself as the better custodian of Ghana's economy, especially as the country's growth outlook is fairly strong now. However, the NDC, according to the report, can present a coherent opposition and hold the NPP to account on unfulfilled campaign promises, particularly on job creation and industrialization. This is a good outlook for the NDC. Now, the opposition NDC says there are challenges, and of course, we'll also be talking about the voter register exhibition. You've heard quite some challenges that has bedeviled the exercise, and that has been raised by the NDC. Says there are challenges which, if not addressed, poses a threat of having many voters disenfranchised. We'll be looking at why other political parties are not complaining, but the NDC. The NDC describes the exercise as a gross violation of the Public Election Regulation, CI 91, and it says per the CI 91, the EC was supposed to provide a provisional register of voters alongside the old registers compiled since 2012 for voters to check out their details in the registers. But the NDC is alleging lots of newly registered names could not be found in the register, while others had their names deleted. And also in the last few hours, you heard the General Secretary of the NDC holding a press conference, and he has been responding to comments that former president was persuaded by the Asantehene to concede defeat in the 2016 elections. Tonight, we'll be interrogating all the issues, and the big question we're asking, can the NDC win power in 2020? It's something I'm going to be discussing with one tough man you know. I'll introduce him shortly. Welcome to PM Express. My guest in the studio, Asiedu Nketia, is General Secretary of the NDC. Good to see you, General.
Thank you.
It's been a hectic week for you since the start of the voter register exhibition, and you've been complaining about some anomalies. I'll get into that shortly, but just this evening, we're hearing from the IGP that the missing Takoradi girls, and I mean, there's so much talked about missing Takoradi girls. I mean, they seem to have brought an end to their investigation, saying that the girls are dead. I mean, how does this come across to you?
Well, let me express my condolence and those of the National Democratic Congress to the relatives of these young girls. It's been a very traumatizing, close to 1 year experience from the parents and relatives. In essence, well, if we seem to have gotten a closure, all that we need to do is to pray for the souls of these young girls, lives that have been cut short prematurely. Maybe we could have seen a president, prime minister, whatever, coming from this group but God knows best. Having said that, as I sit here, I have no means of accepting or denying the fact that the skeletons assumed were indeed the skeletons of those girls. Because the reputation of the police in this matter has been so badly damaged. So you don't know who is telling you the truth. And I have no means of doing DNA and so on. So let's hope that what they have said is true. And if that is true, we all pray and see how we can console the relatives to put together their lives beyond their missing daughters.
Very well. I've been joined on Skype also by Dr. Richmond Afuakwa, who is the head of forensics. Okay, I'm told he's on phone. He's head of forensics department at the University of Cape Coast. Good evening to you, sir. Thanks for your time. Dr. Afuakwa. Okay, we'll be trying to get back to Dr. Afuakwa to pick his comments, because initially he's the one who is so sure that the police have what it takes to conduct a good job on the remains that were found. So we'll be picking his thoughts on that shortly, on this worrying situation. But also along the line, we'll be joined by Dr. Kobby Mensah, who is a political marketing expert, on the EIU report that is predicting Nana Addo as the winner. Let me get into the substantive matter for tonight, and I'd like to begin with the press conference you just held. And you are describing your opponent, or the governing NPP, as being diversionary or playing diversionary tactics, just to, you know, put what you describe as President Mahama against the Asantehene. Why would you say that? Because we've seen a press statement which was issued by the former Chief of Staff, Julius Deborah, who is actually denying that what Otumfuo said is actually not true. So why would you say it's rather the NPP that is trying to create?
I don't see the statement saying that what Otumfuo said is not true. Otumfuo has said something from his perspective. And then Julius Deborah also said something from his perspective. There appears to be some sticky points around it. And that was what I came to clear and reconcile the two statements. Because as Otumfuo said, it is true, those two statements have all admitted that there was an engagement between President Mahama and Otumfuo, both in Julius Deborah's statement and in Otumfuo's own statement. So that is not in doubt. Both statements also indicated that President Mahama took a decision to concede. That is also not in doubt. Because Otumfuo said he persuaded President Mahama to take that decision. And Julius Deborah says that President Mahama took that decision before Otumfuo's intervention. So the fact that that decision was taken by President Mahama to concede is also not in doubt. What is in doubt?
So that could go to confirm that it wasn't actually Otumfuo who advised him to take that decision.
No, but let me say, and I'm saying that whether what is in contention is the timing of Otumfuo's intervention. One says that it happened before the concession. The other said that it happened after the concession.
So what's the reality?
I'm saying that we should not be arguing in that direction, because whether it is A or B, it doesn't change any reality. Because what our opponents seek to portray of President Mahama is that if he didn't take the decision, or he was prevailed upon by Otumfuo or advised by Otumfuo to concede, then he's after all not the Democrat he claims to be, because but for Otumfuo's intervention, he could have taken a different decision. That's all that they are making noise about. And I'm saying that that is faulty. That type of reasoning is completely faulty. Because you see, assuming without admitting that Otumfuo advised President Mahama to take that decision, it took President Mahama to accept that advice and then take the decision to concede.
To concede, yeah.
Okay. So it's like he took a decision after considering inputs from, you know, Otumfuo and other places and concede. So what makes that type of decision-making less democratic? Mm-hmm. Now, on the other side, if President Mahama conceded before Otumfuo's intervention, then it means that Otumfuo confirmed that that decision was right. Okay. So in either way, President Mahama's credentials as a Democrat remains intact. Otumfuo's credentials as a peacemaker remains intact. So what is the argument about? So that's why I'm saying that some of these things are much ado about nothing. If anybody sought to portray President Mahama not as a Democrat, then he's mistaken, because a dictator will not accept anybody's advice. He will be stuck in what he wants to do and continue to do it, irrespective of any advice given from whatever quarters. And we have seen an example of that in 2012. 2012, before the elections, this same overlord of Ashanti, that is Otumfuo, called all the presidential candidates into a meeting. They dialogued and agreed to sign documentation that everybody will accept the outcome of the elections. When the election was eventually declared, the results were eventually declared, did Nana Addo accept the results? No. And it took more than 3 days for Nana Addo to even make a pronouncement. All that he did was to keep quiet for his party people to be, you know, rampaging and attacking taxi drivers and destroying properties and so on. Eventually, when he came back, he came to reject the results. Okay, are you saying that during those days, Otumfuo never spoke to Nana Addo? And if he did, and Nana Addo sought the need to reject Otumfuo's advice, then between 2012 and the attitude of Nana Addo, and 2016 and the attitude of...
But we can't confirm that.
I can confirm to you.
That he spoke with Nana Addo at that time. And he decided
and it is not him alone. Other opinion leaders in the country spoke to Nana Addo. And he said he wouldn't accept the results. And proceeded to go to court. And even after the court's decision, the MPP communicators sought to impugn the integrity of Otumfuo by alleging that Otumfuo, you know, actually bribed the Supreme Court judges to deliver that verdict. It all happened here live. So if the intention of those who are trying to make hills out of this mount is to project either Otumfuo as lacking the credentials he was advertising at the UN, or President Mahama lacking the credentials as a Democrat, or trying to sow a seed of discord between President Mahama and Otumfuo, then all three attempts have failed woefully. Because clearly, it is on record that after one election, all the opinion leaders, including Otumfuo, prevailed on President Akufo-Addo to accept the results, and he rejected. Then, whether Otumfuo prevailed on President Mahama before he conceded, or President Mahama conceded before hearing Otumfuo, the good thing is that he took a decision that was good enough for the country. So that one has failed. It has not succeeded in casting President Mahama as somebody who was an autocrat, because Democrats take decisions after listening to opinions. And some Democrats are also moved to take the right decisions even before hearing opinions. And then opinions come to confirm that they indeed took decisions that were right. That is what has vindicated President Mahama. So the noise about the timing of the intervention is neither here nor there. And then Otumfuo's record as a peacemaker in this country, as somebody who always seeks the good for Ghana, it's also not in doubt. There is no chief in Ghana who can parallel that record because his good deeds are there, and I can testify to the fact that all the 5 presidents in the Fourth Republic have benefited from Otumfuo's wise counsel, from President Rawlings to President Kufuor to President President Tamils to President Mahama, and currently to President Nana Akufo-Addo. But the thing is that he will give the advice. It is up to you to accept or not to accept. So
for you, whether President Mahama took the decision to concede before or after it's neither here nor there. The most important thing is that he conceded and peace prevailed. Let me get onto the phone line and engage Dr. Richard Afuakwa, who is head of forensics at the University of Cape Coast. Good evening to you, Doc. Thanks for your time on PM Express.
Yeah, hello. I cannot hear you, but hello?
Doc, you're on PM Express.
Hello?
Okay, so we'll try and fix that one also so that we can pick his thoughts on the missing Takoradi girls who the police have confirmed that they are no more. But let me get also into the... And let me introduce Dr. Kobby Mensah, who is a political marketing communication analyst. Good evening to you, Doc. Thanks for your time.
Hi, good evening, and thanks for having me.
Grateful for your
let
time.
Let me say hello to General.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me start with you, General. And the latest report by the Economist Intelligence Unit is predicting a win for President Akufo-Addo in 2020 elections. And let me just take excerpts of that. It says the 2016 legislative election was won by the NPP. The campaign was dominated by a faltering economy, which many Ghanaians still associate with Mr. Mahama. Accordingly, the EIU believes that it will be difficult for the NDC under Mahama to portray itself as the better custodian of Ghana's economy, especially as the country's growth outlook is fairly strong now. We therefore expect Mr. Akufo-Addo and the NPP to secure re-election in 2020.
Did you read the report alleged to have come from this EIU last year?
Yes.
How different is it from this?
It's quite similar.
The same thing. It's not just a matter of similarity.
So that could show that the NPP is doing something right.
I am saying that there is no research whose report will be virtually identical with what has taken place on. So I don't know what is happening, but I don't believe that this is a new report because everything inside there is just a complete rehash of what has happened. An MPP is capable of doing anything. So let me leave it there.
So this time, what do you suspect?
I'm not interested in discussing a report that has been discussed earlier on. There is nothing different. If indeed it is also coming from EIU, then they've done a poor job because you cannot have reports in between. I mean, 2 years interval. And the wording of the report, everything is identical with the earlier on. So I have my own, reservations about this so-called report.
So you are not worried about the report predicting?
Not at all. If there is a report, in spite of all the changes that have taken place in the past 1 year, if a report about prospects is just rehashing word for word what report was issued last year, then I have a very good cause to worry about that. And so, in short,
the report also makes some positive predictions for the NDC. But let me gauge the mood.
I don't believe in these predictions. What will be the use?
It could be a guide for your party.
Well, if it is a guide for my party, what is the point in discussing and arguing whether it is...
It's for the electorates, because the electorates also have this. It's a public document. They might have read the document.
Let them discuss it. I don't think that it is something that I want to spend my time.
Let me bring Dr. Kobby Mensah here. Doc, you've also read the report by the EIU, and it's predicting a win for Nana Addo in 2020. What's your appreciation of this report?
Okay, thanks for having me. First of all, let me say that reading the report, I was actually surprised myself because even the portion that you read, it says that EIU believes, I mean, if you have genuinely conducted a study, I don't think
the debate will be, or the discussion will be, you believe. It's supposed to be what the data says.
Yes.
And so I was surprised, seeing those kind of comments, in the report. Secondly, I didn't actually see any methodology that actually suggests that this is what they have arrived, the conclusion, based on. So it was very difficult to sort of appreciate the report from a very credible, position. Having said that, I think you can also say that this they claim to be a forecast. Now, obviously, if it's a forecast, then of course it is not something that is certain. So you couldn't really stick your neck out to say that, yes, the election is going to go for MPP. So the MPP themselves must be worried, using this particular report as a basis to have some confidence. They have to work harder, but not to stake their confidence on this report. Now, if you look at some of the points that were raised, they actually raised the points about certain conditions that when they prevail, the election could also be, moved to the other side. Now, clearly, it doesn't actually show that there's a strong data, supporting this particular, report. And if there is a data, then perhaps it could be a secondary data. They haven't really indicated a primary data that actually brings a perspective of people ready to vote for one party or the other. So I was a little bit surprised, this kind of coming from the EIU, whether really they have a strong data backing it or not.
But you said the NPP should be worried about this. Shouldn't the NDC also be worried about this report? Because the report goes on to say that if the NDC can present a coherent opposition and hold the NPP to account on unfulfilled campaign promises, particularly on job creation and industrialization, where progress has been generally slow and success patchy, the election could be closely contested. You think the NDC shouldn't also bother itself about this report?
To take the reins of government. So certainly they would actually be doing that. Usually it's about the incumbent that actually feel buoyant, or the incumbent that actually feel that they can retain, the leadership. Don't forget, there is a psyche in Ghanaian, politics that you have to do the times. So most of the time, the incumbent actually has that tendency to be complacent, and that's why I'm saying they have to be worried. Now, the basis, some of the basis of this particular report, I mean, if you look at the debate that they're making, it's even suggesting that the campaign itself has no effect, but there is clear evidence that campaigns also have effect. Granted that people actually attribute the economic downturn, to the reigns of NDC at the time. Are you then saying that going into elections, both parties presenting a compelling, a coherent debate cannot win them elections one way or the other? Of course they can. So for me, coming from a marketing strategy perspective, I believe that every prevailing condition is right or wrong for any political party. What matters is how the party strategizes going forward in winning the election or losing it.
I'm grateful for your time. Dr. Kobby Mensah is a political marketing communication analyst, and he put it right there. But he also says that you should not ignore even any report that comes your way. You shouldn't ignore it. You must capitalize on it.
That it doesn't sound like a new report to us.
Okay.
Everything in there looks like some rehashed thing, and I don't think that the EIU, that reputable organization, will be doing that type of research. So I want to, unless I stand to be corrected, but I want to believe that this was the report of last year whose date has been changed to reflect this year, because everything, it is curious to read the report that's like lying hook and sinker with the same thing that we read last year. So it appears nothing has happened in between the years. But that's why I don't want to spend my time on
but
that
you
type
believe
of
the
report.
previous ones, but this one?
I'm saying that you cannot have a report. You see, something happened when we were in Parliament. This same MPP, there was a problem in Dabon. And then Hackman Owusu-Agyemang was the Minister of Interior. And there was a curfew. And every month he had to come to Parliament to come and, convince parliamentarians that the curfew needed to be extended for 1 more month. And every occasion that he comes to request for an extension, the same reasons. So one MP just got a Kofi Ato, MP for Whole Central. He says that, Honorable Minister, I think that you do yourself a little good if each time you appear here, you just change the date on the report. And we took about a series of 5 reports, and the words were the same thing. I want to believe strongly that that is the trend this so-called AIU report is following. That's why I don't want to spend time discussing it. Well, we discussed everything that needed to be discussed last year, and the same report is the same. So you can go for our comments for last year, and then apply them
and also
to this
related to elections is the voter register exhibition, which there's been so much fuss about, and because it's also fundamental. But more importantly is the fact that this week we've heard the Electoral Commissioner, JoyNews Mensah, talk about how she inherited a weak electoral commission and that they're running so many reforms to ensure that it becomes the electoral commission that is credible, that all of us want to see. I want to pick your reactions on that shortly, but let me also get onto Skype and speak with Dr. Richmond Afuakwa. Good evening to you, Doc. Can you hear me now?
Good evening. Yes, I can hear you clearly. Good evening.
Doc, quickly, we've heard the IGP talk about how the 4 missing Takoradi girls are no more. You have said that the police have what it takes to conduct a proper forensic on the remains that were found in Takoradi. Satisfied?
Before I go to whether I'm satisfied or not, I think it is time now to express our condolences to the family members whose family members have passed on, and we wish them the best in the coming days, because it is not easy to get the news that indeed the remains that were found.
I think we're losing Dr. Afuakwa there.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, sure.
Sure. So I was only expressing my condolences to the families of these girls. And then going forward, whether satisfied or not, I think the police has done themselves some good, bringing this whole case to the point where it is now. In other jurisdictions, such cases usually will go cold. And for the kind of equipment and the kind of personnel the Ghana Police Service has, I think they have done themselves some good. And we will have to interrogate the whole process again and then see how the whole thing started before we can talk about satisfaction or not.
There are those who feel that this whole thing should have also been conducted by a private forensic department to be sure that the police is actually doing the right thing. You agree?
Well, now the first report has come out. You know, the family members said that they would want an independent investigator also to go through this. So once everything is done, I think it lies within the rights of the family, if they so wish, to have a second opinion on this case.
And so the family can actually call for that?
Oh, why not? Now that it has been confirmed that indeed the human remains are that of their family members, I think it's within their right to ask for that. It is even within their right to ask for the remains for proper interment.
So before the interment, they can actually decide to have a confirmation or not. It lies within their rights.
All right, I'm grateful for your time. Dr. Afuakwa is head of forensics department at the University of Cape Coast. I cannot engage him on whether this we can trust this report or not, because I'm not sure he has access to that. And so we'll be interrogating as the days go by. And so let's come back to the election matters and the issues that you have been raising. But first, let me pick your reaction on Kobby Mensah's assertion that she inherited a weak electoral commission.
Well, it means that the whole country was wrong and Kobby Mensah alone is right.
Right from Afarijan.
Right from Afarijan, because this is a commission that has earned several national and international accolades and so on. And you come on board, you have not conducted a single credible elections now. And you are in a position to pass judgments on all your predecessors.
So far, she's conducted about 3.
None of them, I'm saying credible elections. I chose my words carefully.
Why do you say
None
that?
of them, he hasn't held a single credible elections. And we should be worried about the elections that are ahead of her in future. It gives me the impression of somebody who sets his own exam questions, mark them, and declare distinction for herself, and then congratulate herself. That is what is happening. I want to believe that observers don't have that opinion that he has about his, her own ability and her own commission and so on. Because the verdict is out there. Even Cordio has had reason to indict every exercise that this commission has done. Right from the first limited registration exercise, to the flawed referendum, to the flawed Ayawaso West Wogon elections, to the second flawed registration, and to the currently flawed exhibition of the voters register.
That hasn't
but
ended
you see,
yet.
if you have, no, but everything about it is wrong. Everything is about it is wrong. I want to believe that if she believes that all the laws of the country are also wrong, and that the laws can be put aside, and her own fantasies and imaginations are what constitute good performance, it is only on that basis that she can be congratulating herself, because everything she has done up to this stage is flawed.
But
and the current exercise, look, you remember when we were going into this limited registration, we told her that Electoral Commission has no means of making pronouncement on population figures. But the commission is by law to register the names of a certain population segment. So they had to pick the numbers of that segment from the state institution that is charged with making determinations about registration. They refused flatly. And then by guesswork, they established that they were registering 300,000. Then as the days wore on, they increased the thing to 500,000. And then in the middle of the exercise, they pronounced 700,000. And then at the end of the exercise, they claim they have registered 1.2 million. If that is what good performance is, then I cannot find any word for bad performance or poor performance. Apart from that, when they were approaching this registration exercise, we warned them that we have a well-established system of registration accompanied with its equipment and all that. So all you need to do is to service those pieces of equipment, and then you can go and do a proper registration without any major flaws. Parliament appropriated money for you. You chose to ignore all that and rather went to choose equipment that is inappropriate for the registration, failed registration. We warned that this thing will fail. It won't work. You ignored us, went to the field, and the equipment failed. And you are now congratulating yourself for good work done. Is that what competence is about? So, and then after that, even this exhibition, the law requires that political parties should be given copies of the register in the form determined by the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission determined that they will give us the copies in electronic form. We've since written to them, provided everything we needed to provide, but as we sit here, 7 or 8 days into the registration exercise, no political party has a copy of the provisional register. Okay. So if we are to do exhibition, for us to be able to study what is contained in the register and then to be able to pinpoint names that ought not to be there and those names that are to be included, what are we going to do it with? So I'm surprised that this type of mediocrity is being exhibited, and then those who are engaged in it are congratulating themselves for good work done, and then blaming the people who have done excellent job in the past, whose record you have not been able to equal. And you are impugning their integrity and all that. I'm surprised. So I think that the problem is with the standard of performance. Okay. You need to know what is good before you do good. Okay. So if your standard of good is bad in the eyes of the public, you will seek to do things that are bad.
So, General, you don't think that the Electoral Commission needs any reform? You think it's okay the way it is?
I'm not saying it needs or it doesn't need any reform. Change can be negative. Okay. And that is what is happening there. Because we've come to a point where we compile voters register, and then we are able to produce provisional registers for exercises like exhibition and other things to be done. You have failed to produce a common provisional register, and you are calling that one as achievement. As we sit here, in capturing data on a biometric register, there will be a segment of the population whose biometric, the thumbprints, cannot be captured and verified. Yeah. And so maybe due to amputation, maybe due to some work with the hands that has created problems and so on. So we register those people as face only. Okay. The last time we did this registration in 2012, 2014, the face only, those whose biometric features could not be taken, they numbered only 270,000 in a register of more than 15 million. Okay. The register that has just been captured, around 1.2 million. The face only, the numbers of the face only in the register that is being exhibited, it is unacceptably high. It is heading towards more than half of the figure that was registered in a population of 15 million. What does it tell you? Are you saying that suddenly, and to tell you what, those that are unable to have their biometric features taken are people who are in the higher age groups, who have worked with their hands for a long time, and it creates problems with the
machine cannot recognize it.
Machine can. But now you are registering very young people. And they are the people who are showing more face only than the older men. What does it tell you? And apart from that, the existing register, before this limited register, we requested for the existing register before the commencement of the limited registration. It was not given. And then this new registration has been done. You are going to exhibit the two before you put them together. So at every exhibition center, you are supposed to exhibit the existing register, because that existing register, some people have died. Yeah. And so some may come to want to delete the names of dead people from it. And then you have the new provisional register also displayed side by side. So if you approach the registration exhibition center, you are asked whether your name was in the old register or you just registered, and then you know where to check your name. This commission has not been able to provide these two sets of registers at all the registration centers as we speak.
Okay, so
now.
which one do they have, the old one?
In a lot of, about the first 5 days, just the old register, and then there was no name of a new register. So all those people who went to the centers the first 5 days, if they were new registrants, they won't find anything. And I'm told yesterday, in some of the centers, they were sending this new register yesterday. So people who have visited the centers 5 days ago may have to repeat the visit to be able to check whether their names are there or not. And even in the new provisional register they have brought, several of the names that have been registered are not there at all. In some areas we have visited, you have 248 registrants, and then there are only 8 names will be there. And so it's just haphazard. And that is why we believe that as at now, they are engaged in an illegal exercise, because we should be given copies of the register with which we can monitor. And you are monitoring yourselves and declaring yourself, giving yourself excellent pass marks and so on, congratulating yourself. So there is an issue of law inside there. And we are investigating our options, because we cannot allow them to get away with that type of mess and still call themselves competent people. There are places where the NIA registrants, those who use the NIA card to register, whose names were ordered by the court to be deleted. Some of those names
are still there,
have resurfaced. It is not that they are still there. They have resurfaced in this new register, because when the data is deleted, it is not discarded completely. It is kept there for records.
Okay.
Some of those names have resurfaced in this register they are displaying. And you have misalignment of codes. You know, new centers, new constituencies have been created. And so they needed to generate new codes for them. They've messed the coding system up completely. So you have, some card you are holding that pertains to one district, and then your name will be in another district. So all the codes have been messed up. And again, you have discrepancies in total number of registrants. When you take places like Hohoe, we know the number of people who were registered and the number of people who were existing, number of names who were existing in the old register. So if you put the two together, you will be able to know the absolute numbers you are dealing with. When you put the two together,
it's interesting that
they are in excess of the expected numbers by certain huge figures.
That the
so
law,
there are shortages somewhere, there are increases somewhere, and so on. Everything is in a mess.
It's in a mess. But I'm surprised that it does appear that it's only the NDC that is having problems with the exercise, because so far we've not heard from all the other parties.
If you don't have the capacity to do the observation, how are you going to get results from observation and to be complaining about? How many parties have had the capacity to go to the field to see what is happening? So how can they comment?
So the NPP hasn't been there? All the other parties haven't?
If the mess is benefiting NPP, you don't expect them to talk.
But how?
But the other opposition parties, we are in a different category. But if they don't have the capacity to go and do the observation, to field agents and so on, how are they going to be able to
Are you suggesting that this mess you're talking about is going to favor the NPP?
Why not?
How? Is the EC doing their exercise? Why bring in the NPP?
But we have said this already, that this EC was reconstituted with the purpose of messing elections up, which will favor the incumbent. I haven't run away from this, and I still have that belief. I'm yet to be proven wrong by their performance. But so far, this type of mediocre performance that has been displayed by the EC seems to be confirming my fears every passing day. And I'm not going to run away from that position unless I'm convinced about a different thing. But as I sit here now, I am sure the mess is deliberately created. Because if you are making mistakes, people will sympathize with you when you recognize that they are mistakes and that you need to work on them. But when you are making mistakes and you are congratulating yourself for doing the good thing and then denigrating the performance of all your predecessors who have performed better than you are doing now, and then you have a president also clearing you of any wrongdoing, what do you expect?
We're live on PM
President whose
Express.
party is going to go into elections with us and is congratulating every day the performance of Electoral Commission when it is clear that the Electoral Commission is doing all the wrong things.
When we come back from this break, we will explore, because we're talking about the law, and the NDC says the EC is breaching the law to favor one political party. We'll interrogate how the NDC wants to go about this. We're live on PM Express. My guest in the studio, Asiedu Nketia, he's General Secretary for the NDC. Before we went on that break, we were talking about verification machines that were not available or are not available at the voter exhibition exercise centers. But I remember that Parliament approved some monies for these machines to be purchased. And of course, it's one of the reasons you had a banter with the Electoral Commissioner some time ago.
She decided not to use that money for the intended purpose. And she claims that she has the permission of Parliament to vary it for whatever purpose. Those are issues that we'll be dealing with at the stage of auditing. But the important thing is that do what is needful and what is in accordance with the law. Part of what is verified at the exhibition center is to verify your thumbprint too. So people whose thumbprints have been captured during the exercise, in exhibition exercises like this, you send the verification equipment to the exhibition center. So when you check your name and your particulars and they are correct, you also verify your thumbprint.
Exactly.
And then if the machine declares you verified, then you can go home and rest that my name has been captured properly, my biometric particulars on my fingerprints are also okay. If you try it and it doesn't work, then you don't wait till the voting day. You enter and apply for you to be registered as face only. You see, so that when it comes to election day, it doesn't generate problems. All these things, none of them have happened. None of the registration centers have had any of those. The equipment have not been deployed at all at the exhibition, center.
And you raised
so
the alarm to the EC. What?
But they know it.
They know.
They know it.
So because this is very fundamental to election 2020, what do you intend to do about this? Because you can't let this pass.
We are already in touch with our lawyers to study the options that are available to us in law, because in democracy is about rule of law. So we cannot gloss over these fundamental bridges. But you see, at times, what we tend to believe that these are intentional, because they have sent signal that they will be changing the register completely in an election year. We have said that registers are not changed in election year like that. It creates problems. Technology is not changed in election year. So what they have said about doing is that let us merge the existing register, so that when we come next year, when we are arguing for a new register, everybody will agree with that, because they will consider the existing register as a mess. So they will now. So it's an opportunity to look for contracts.
Will you seek redress in court? Will you seek redress in court?
That's what I'm saying.
Is that one of the options?
We are looking. The lawyers are looking at those options. Why not? If it is necessary that we go to court, we do that. You see, because you do that to save the nation. You understand? So these things that are happening, and I want to believe that all this hula baloo about Otumfo's statement and President Mahama's reactions and all that, they are all diversionary attempts to just divert the nation's attention from 4 major burning issues that we are confronted now, which every citizen should be worried about. There is a mess up in the admission process to the senior high schools, and already students are committing suicide. It is a matter that should engage the attention of the nation and the media. They want to the nation to be debating whether Otumfo advised Mahama when he did so and how Mahama considered. Then there is an issue about PBS. There is an issue about Ayawaso West Wogon report, which the president and government is in breach of the constitution. We'll
be monitoring how the NDC addresses.
I even want to believe that the timing of the release of this, Takoradi girls case is part of the orchestration.
We'll be monitoring how the NDC goes about this as the voter exhibition exercise goes to an end, and we'll be looking at how to exercise. My name is Aisha Brian. Many thanks for watching. Johnson Asiedu Nketia has been my guest in the studio, and you at home, thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of our program.